Welcome to Travel Tales, a mini-series within Distress to Joyful Bailey's Way podcast. I'm your host, Bailey Raber, here to travel the world with you. In each episode, you'll hear firsthand how my travel experiences have gone, both within the United States and abroad. Together, we'll discover new cultures, learn about a variety of new places for you to go out and explore, bring light to how I navigate my bipolar disorder while traveling, and, most importantly, we'll have fun. You'll leave each episode stocked full of exciting new ideas, interesting information, and feeling like it's time to hop on a plane. So come on, friends, let's start exploring. Hello, friends. Welcome back to part 2 of an Italian adventure. Welcome back. I mean, this might be your first time tuning in, but hopefully not, because it might not make sense if you just jump in right now. So if you're watching on YouTube, be excited, get excited, whatever, because I've got four different things sitting in front of me that I'm going to show you. I'm not going to start with that. I'm going to continue on with the story of this trip and all the fun and adventure and craziness that came along in the last few days of my trip to Italy. But at the end of the episode, I'm going to show you a couple different things and talk about them, and I'm super excited. And if you are not watching on YouTube, that's okay. Just make sure that you follow Distress to Joyful _ Bailey's Way on Instagram or on Facebook, and I will post photos of these things too, so that way you aren't missing out either. I'll also put them in the show notes because I'm so kind. So, where are we now? We are still in Rome. It is day 4 of the trip, March 16th, 2021, and I wrote this at 9:39 p.m. And funny thing, guys, I didn't realize that back then I was not only dating my journals, which I do religiously. I think dates are super important because even if you're writing down just like a paragraph and you don't put a date, you never know. Like, I've literally seen things come into fruition, things that I've written down that I wanted, or I wrote down something that happened and I'm like, I wish things would change. And then I see it years later and it's changed into what I want, or I've been able to achieve what I wanted. And it's really crazy. And this is getting a little sidetracked, but this is from The Secret, the Law of Attraction. I can do a podcast episode on that later. I'm not going to dive into it now. But funny thing is that I still, to this day, when I journal in the evening, I put, or even in the morning, doesn't matter what time of day, I literally write the date and the time that I'm writing. And that's exactly what I was doing back in 2021. So over 12 years ago. It's so crazy. Like, you just don't realize these things that you do sometimes. And then you go back and you're like, oh, wow, that's wild. Like, I still have that habit to this day, which again is a really good habit. So if you're a journaler and you don't write the dates on anything, I really strongly suggest that you do, because it's also a very good indicator when you're ready to look back and see your progress on any kind of thing you've done, whether it be you're overcoming a conflict, whether you're working on yourself, whether you're, trying to achieve something, whatever it is. If you have a date, then you can go back and you can see this is how it was back then versus this is how it is now. So keep that in mind. But let's get back to the story, because that's why you guys are really here. So I wrote, today we visited the Vatican Museum, the Sistine Chapel, St. Peter's Basilica, all this morning. Wow, I used really horrible grammar in this journal. It was 9:39 p.m., y'all. Sorry. During the afternoon, it rained all day, by the way. We got to walk around Rome while the rest of the group that signed up went to the Roman catacombs. The Vatican Museum was pretty awesome, but the Sistine Chapel amazed me the most. We couldn't take pictures in there, unfortunately. So let me stop right there, because otherwise I could just keep going and going and going, and let's talk about little bits and pieces from that paragraph. So, the Vatican. Let me tell you a funny story real quick that I remember just so vividly. So we get to the Vatican, and if you don't know this, the Vatican is its own, not country, but like its own entity within Rome in Italy. So there are things that happen in the Vatican that have like they're not they're not subjected to Italian laws or even Roman laws. It's fucking wild. And if you're into true crime, there is a documentary, I think it's called Secrets of the Vatican. I might be completely wrong, but there's a documentary series on Netflix about a girl who went missing or got murdered, or maybe it's a combo of the two, within the Vatican, and how because it was within the Vatican walls, they are governed by themselves, so they are not subjected to Italian laws or Roman laws, and it's fucking wild. It's wild, guys, because you're in a city, in a country that has, and then they just get to do their own shit. It's crazy. So when you first get there, you got to have your passport with you because you're basically visiting like another country, but you're not. And so we were told to make sure we have our passports with us. And of course, teenagers, you have to remind us and actually check and physically see them because that could be a disaster. But also when you first get there, y'all, you have to go through a TSA type airport security to go into the Vatican. So yeah, you're putting your bag, you're taking shit out of your pockets, you're taking your fucking shoes off. And I thought it was the craziest thing because I'm like, isn't the Vatican just a church? Like, why are we having to do all this crazy shit, right? Like, we didn't have to do that when we went into St. Peter's Basilica. We didn't have to do that in all of these museums and other places that we went to. So why are we doing this here? So after we went through it, I took my little camera, which if you saw any of the videos on YouTube, you can tell I took all the photos from this trip on my little pink Nikon camera, which it was a digital camera, so I uploaded them straight to the computer, but the quality is shit. But I remember we finally got through it, and I turned around and I took a photo because I'm like, this is crazy. Like, I can't believe we just had to do this to go inside a fucking church. And the guards came up to me and they were like, hey, did you just take a photo of this? And I was like, yeah. And they were like, you need to delete that. And I was like, what? Little 17-year-old me was like, I had to fucking delete a photo? Like, what the fuck? And they were like, yeah, for security reasons, like, you can't take photos of this. Like, we need to physically see you delete it. So they stood over my shoulder and watched me delete the photo. Now, as a 17-year-old, I was like, what the fuck? This is crazy. Where am I right now? Like, am I going to get, like, murdered while I'm here? Like, what is happening? But now, like, as an adult, looking back, I'm like, okay, it makes sense. Because you can't take pictures of the TSA airport securities. Because people who've, like, if you allow people to do that, then they can try to figure out how to get away with things in the system. And so it made sense, but it was wild. And I remember that so vividly. Like, that was crazy. So another thing, when we went through the Vatican, we're looking at the things, and honestly, I don't remember a whole lot of it because back then I wasn't super into museums like I am now. I do hope to go back one day so I can actually spend time and, like, enjoy looking at things within there because there's a ton of shit. Gold everywhere, paintings on the ceilings and the walls, all kinds of crazy shit. But I do remember going to the Sistine Chapel, which most of you are probably aware of it, and if you're not, the Sistine Chapel is a very, very, very famous painting that is on the ceiling of this chapel inside the Vatican. And it was painted by, I think, Michelangelo. I'm probably wrong, so do not quote me on that, because I'm not here to deliver perfect facts. I'm here to recount a story. But that painting that's up there, it's super famous. And when we went in there, first of all, they're like, you can't take photos. Something about with the flash, and the flash could, like, ruin it up there in the paint because it's from so long ago. They're trying to preserve it. So no photos were allowed. And they had all kinds of, like, security people in there watching you, making sure you weren't taking out your camera. Because, again, guys, this was 2011. We did not all have iPhones in our pockets or Androids or smartphones. We didn't have a camera with a touchscreen attached. We didn't. Another thing, you had to be fucking quiet in there. You had to be quiet. And I talk a lot, and I don't like being quiet, so this was not my favorite thing. Don't get me wrong, it was really cool. I remember just staring up in awe and just staring for so long that my neck hurt from like just looking straight up at it and just thinking like, wow, this is crazy that whoever painted this, they probably had issues with their neck afterwards because you're just having to look straight up. How do you even paint on the ceiling without getting paint everywhere? Like, that's what I want to know. So, yeah, that was just a very, very interesting experience. And I do remember it raining that entire day because I hate rain. And so I remember being glad that we spent most of the morning in the Vatican, out of the rain. That was super nice. So then we get to the rest of the group. They went to the Roman catacombs. So there are catacombs in only 2 places in the entire world, Paris and Rome. And I have been to both of these cities now. And both times that I've been, each time I've been to this city that contains catacombs, I wasn't able to go to the catacombs. So we tried to go when we were in Paris just a few weeks ago, but unfortunately it was completely booked up. So boo, we didn't get to go. That's okay. We'll make it back one day. In Rome, you had to pay extra to do this with the tour that we were on, this EF tour. And because we went for free and I'm cheap and I'm like, I don't want to pay for something extra that I'm not really interested in. Because, again, back then I wasn't into all of these things as much as I am now. Which is really unfortunate when I think about it. But this just gives me a reason to go back, y'all, right? So most of our group signed up to do the catacombs. And the ones that didn't, which was me and Spencer and Will and maybe some other kids, I don't remember who else. But the rest, we just got to roam around the city, which was fun because, again, it's just 17-year-olds just roaming around doing what we want. And that I enjoyed, of course. No supervision, whatever. So back to reading from my journal. St. Peter's Basilica was also amazing, although the displays of the dead Pope's bodies kind of freaked me out. Ooh, yes. So this was interesting and something that I had no idea about because I didn't grow up Catholic. I grew up going to Church of Christ, not Latter-day Saints, just regular old Church of Christ. And it's completely different than Catholicism. I was actually never allowed to go into a Catholic church. I've probably mentioned that before in some other episodes. But yeah, so being in Rome, I went into a couple different Catholic churches, as you can see or hear, whatever. And I remember thinking it was so strange because in St. Peter's Basilica, they have dead popes' bodies, like mummies of the bodies. And they're literally on display. They are inside of a glass case and you can see the body. That freaked me out. That really did. Because I'm like, okay, I don't know anything about this religion and how this works. But in my church, we definitely don't have dead bodies anywhere. That's not anything that we're into. And even to this day, I'm just kind of like, yeah, I don't think I could go to a Sunday morning service every single week with a dead body staring back at me. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm into true crime, but that's not crime, but that, I don't know. It just, I just found it so strange. So, but if you're Catholic and you understand the reason for all of this, please send me a message and tell me what's up because I would love to know. I have no idea. And it's not something that I would just honestly freely Google because again, I'm not Catholic nor am I religious currently. And so, yeah, but I am curious as to why they would do that. So if you want to tell me from your perspective, I'd love to hear it. Please. So, me, Spencer, Will, Mr. Ryan, and Miss McGuire all decided to go to the Spanish Steps during our 4 hours of free time. But we ended up in the complete wrong direction and ended up catching a taxi there. Oh, man. So the taxi dropped us off at the top of the stairs, so we just had to walk down it, which was very nice. Well, my feet hurt and I'm exhausted, so ciao. Okay, so that's the end of my writing from day 4, but I do remember this incident. It was raining outside. We wanted to check out the Spanish Steps. That was part of the Lizzie McGuire movie, so I was like, I have to go to the Spanish Steps because this was on Lizzie McGuire, and she was there, and I need to be there too. And I remember we had to get a taxi because we got so fucking lost. I don't know if we had taken a bus the wrong Oh, we did. Oh my God, that's right. We got on a bus and we went the wrong direction. And I remember Mr. Ryan walked up to these girls and very slowly and very loudly said, "Do you speak English?" And oh my God, Spencer and Will and I, first of all, we died because we're like, dude, you can't do that. Holy shit. And then we also laughed at him because these bitches like looked at him and they spoke, like, they probably cussed him out in Italian for all we know, but they like said something, they looked at each other, and then they walked to the other end of the bus. Yeah, so pro tip, guys, if you go to another country and you want to know if somebody speaks English, do not speak to them like they're deaf or like they're stupid. People hate that shit. I hate that shit. Like, would you like to be spoken to like that? No. So if you're curious if someone speaks English, walk up to them and speak to them like a normal person in English. And they'll either respond to you or they'll, shake their head, shake their hands, no English, or they'll say something to you in their native language and they'll walk away. That's it. Don't be disrespectful. Yes, I'm sorry, Mr. Ryan, that was disrespectful. It was funny because we were 17 and that's very immature, but y'all, please learn from that mistake. Do not do that. Do not treat people like that. That's not cool. It's really not cool. The taxi ride, though. So there was 5 of us, right? Will, Spencer, Miss McGuire, Mr. Ryan, and me. And taxis only have 4 seats. And it was expensive. I remember the taxi being really fucking expensive, and we all kind of pitched in to pay for it since we all fucked up and got lost. I had to sit on either Spencer or Will's lap. I had to sit on somebody's lap in the back seat because we couldn't fit 5 people. It was only seated for 4. And we're like, fuck it. We're not getting 2 taxis. We're not splitting up. We're not doing this. And the guy let us. So, I mean, we all know in the U.S. you can't do that. Now in India, we do that. And I know this because I've been to India multiple times now. And like people do that, and that's an everyday thing, and it's no big deal. But in the US, like, you get ticketed for that shit. And so being in Italy and just doing that, I was like, okay, like, this is cool. Like, whatever. But yeah, I remember that day just being very rainy, and it was interesting and crazy and chaotic, and yeah. So the next day, though, gets more interesting. So this is day 5, March 17th. Today we got up super early and went to visit the ruins of Pompeii. It was really neat to see how the people lived, some actual dead people, and to see structures and other things that survived because of the volcanic ash. Pompeii isn't even that close to Mount Vesuvius, the volcanic mountain in the Sorrento region. What actually happened was a cloud of ash came from the volcano when it erupted, and the cloud happened to stay above the city of Pompeii for 48 hours, covering the city in 25 feet of ash. So let's talk about Pompeii for a minute. So I remember this day, and just, it was so fucking surreal, y'all, because if you don't know much about Pompeii, I kind of just gave you a little history lesson. I'm actually really proud of myself for all of the information that I retained and then put in this journal. Like, snaps for Bailey. That was so good. But this happened like hundreds and thousands of years ago, I believe. I don't know how long ago, but ancient Roman times. When you're in Pompeii, you can see Mount Vesuvius. It's not close. There's actually a group photo of us with Mount Vesuvius way far in the background, which I believe is an active volcano still to this day. Don't quote me on that. Google it for yourself. But it erupted and had this massive eruption back in whatever BC. And the volcanic ash, like I just told you, went into a cloud, sat over the city of Pompeii, and just rained ash and lava and shit onto the city, coated the city in 25 feet of this. And you know what happened when it coated the city, y'all? It preserved everything underneath. It preserved the streets. It preserved the buildings. It preserved the paintings on the inside of people's homes. It preserved vases, vases, whatever. It preserved all the things. It even preserved people's bodies. That I will say was really kind of also creepy because there were glass cases where you would see like the figure of a body, and it was also a little heartbreaking because you would see them often in like the fetal position, or they're like hugging their knees and like covering their heads. Some of them were just like laying down, like maybe they like got pelted down to the ground, but you can still see their teeth and stuff in these volcanic ash ruins and preservations of their bodies. It's crazy. It's crazy. This must have been an archaeologist's dream to have discovered Pompeii because there was just so much shit to uncover. But you walk these streets and they're the exact same as they were back then. And so that's why it's so surreal because you're like, holy shit. Like I'm walking on the streets, the exact same streets. Nothing has changed as these people in ancient Roman times did. And it's so cool. But what's also interesting about Pompeii is it's kind of nicknamed Land of the Penises because back in ancient times, bathhouses, Italy was all about bathhouses. And if you don't know what a bathhouse is, it's more so for the LGBT community, specifically for gay men. But back then, you didn't have baths in your house. Like you didn't. That wasn't a thing. So they had bathhouses for specific genders. And for the males specifically, apparently there was a lot of gay activity going on in these bathhouses. And so in order for you to find the bathhouses, y'all, there were carvings of penises in the street that are like in this like cement blocks or whatever they, not cement blocks, but you know what I mean, the road blocks, carved penises like arrows pointing you to where the bathhouses are. I shit you not. It was amazing. And we actually got to go into one of these ancient bathhouses, which was so fucking cool because you're like, dude, people were actually here, like hanging out, taking baths, doing other shit, which is probably really inappropriate for a bunch of 17-year-olds to be wandering around, but fuck it. Like, it was so cool. It really was. And that whole city, though, like we were taken into homes where people lived, and the paint is still on the wall from thousands of years ago, completely preserved. The furniture is still there in the exact same position that it was back then, completely preserved. Fucking wild. If you're ever in Italy, you need to make it to Pompeii because it's literally like nothing else you're going to find anywhere else because it's just preserved history like nothing you've seen before. Like nothing you've seen before. So we stopped at an Italian truck stop on the way here, and it was super interesting to see how different / the same it was compared to American truck stops. Which, y'all, I found a humongous jar of Nutella that cost 60 euros. Y'all, it was bigger than my head. I took a photo holding it, and I will definitely post that in the show notes. It's also going to be on the video for this part of the slideshow for YouTube. Sorry, and it's definitely a slideshow for YouTube because I have zero video footage, unfortunately, because we didn't have video cameras in our pocket back then. I had a Nikon, remember? Yeah, so that was wild. And, you know, this was my first time in Europe ever. And so it was really fascinating to see the differences and also what's the same. Because I'm just an explorer. I love to explore new places. I love to try new things. But I am also always astonished by like, oh wow, it's the same as back home. Because you can't expect that when you go to another country. You can't expect to find the same things from back home. So when you do, it's kind of like a fun little like, oh, that's a surprise. Cool. I finally got to have legit Italian pizza made in a Firestone oven that they've been using since before Christ. Well, they've been using that type of oven, not the actual oven itself, since then. Which I do remember this lunch. It was amazing. It took 5 days for me to have legit Italian pizza, which is way too long. Way too long, if you ask me. After we left Pompeii, we went to the Sorrento region where our hotel is. It's right along the side of these giant hills, or maybe it's mountains, ? And it's also right along the beach. Our room, which was shared by me, Brittany, and Shelby, has an awesome view of the ocean, and I got the bed right by the giant window. We had from about 3:30 p.m. until dinner at 7 p.m. to have free time. So at first, me, Spencer, and Will went down to the beach to explore. Then we walked up to the village and explored a tiny bit, then came back and saw some of the kids from Georgia were going to take a bus to the city of Sorrento. Okay, so this is a very interesting story. I remember the hotel and just feeling like going down to get to it because like the hotel was on like the side of not a side of a cliff, but like it was built into a cliff. Hard to explain. I have photos. I'll make sure that they're there. The sand on this beach was very like brown and black and like it felt dirty. It wasn't like Greece, like the beaches there, or Florida, or the Gulf Shores, Alabama. No, it was like Surfside Beach or Galveston Beach, but worse. It wasn't a beach that you would actually like want to go to. But it was cool to be next to the water because I love the sound of the ocean and all of that fun stuff. And I do remember walking up, and it was just uphill and just being so exhausted. I was totally out of shape back then. And I'm just like, dudes, let's go back. Like, fuck this. I'm not walking up. So we turned around and went back. And y'all just hang tight because this day gets really fucking crazy. So me and the guys went and got Mr. Ryan, and we all paid $2.20 in euros, so not dollars, like 2.2 euros for a round trip bus ticket to Sorrento. We got off the bus, we walked around, looked at some of the shops, which were mainly clothes and shoes and stuff, and it got dark, cold, and it started to rain slightly, so we got back on a bus. Well, we apparently got on the wrong bus, so we got off of it and we tried to find the right one, but we had no luck. So we went into the nearest hotel to have them call a taxi for us. The problem was, guys, we had no idea where our hotel was. So that explains why we got on the wrong bus, because we just fucking hopped on a bus. I remember being so excited. I still have the bus ticket. The bus picked us up like right down the street from the hotel. It was really, really convenient. And nobody thought to get the name of the hotel, the address, nothing. We literally had no fucking idea. We just were like, okay, bye, and just left. So stupid, y'all. So stupid. So when we walked into this hotel and we were trying to have them help us, they're like, okay, where are you going? And we tried explaining, but since we didn't have a name, we were fucked. We were totally fucked. So thankfully, oh my God, Spencer took thousands of photos the entire time we were there, and he took a photo of the room key of the hotel. So we showed them the pictures of that, and we showed them pictures of the side of the hotel, and they were able to get us back there. Thank God. So they were able to call a taxi for us, and we were able to show this and be able to get there. But shit, y'all. Learn from our mistakes. So that was terrifying, thinking that we were never going to make it back. So we made it back in time just for dinner, which I wrote wasn't the best. Dessert was an apple. So then we walked to the nearest restaurant for a gelato afterwards. And then I say, ciao, this was not the last day of the trip. I just stopped journaling. Which I did. I did stop journaling. So let me just tell you what happened from there. I remember when we left dinner, we found a restaurant nearby. They let us drink there because we were all over the age of 16, which was the legal drinking age in Italy at the time. And I remember we ordered wine and we ordered limoncello. And back then I had a problem with alcohol. All of the problems actually started about a year before this trip ever took place. I got pretty fucking drunk. I did. And then I had more alcohol in my room, which was actually in this bottle. Isn't this the cutest fucking bottle ever? This is a alcohol bottle. It had limoncello in it. I still have the limoncello tag on it. And it is shaped like the Italian boot. It is shaped like the shape of Italy, but it's a boot. And it's so cute. And it's hand painted. This one's actually from Capri, so I got it the following day. But limoncello. I had other bottles of it. This was the one I was going to keep and I wasn't going to drink, which I ended up drinking when I came back home. But I had other bottles and that's what I drank a lot of. This shit is really sweet, guys. So I not only got drunk, but I got sick. And I remember we finally got back to the hotel that evening and I was a bad influence and I was convincing Brittany and Shelby to drink with me. And they did a little bit, but they did not get on my level. And I remember figuring out that the bed that I was sleeping on actually converted into bunk beds, which was really fucking cool. So I turned it into a bunk bed, but then I couldn't figure out how to undo that. So I just slept on the top the whole time. But Miss McGuire came in and caught me. Well, she caught all of us drinking, but caught me like fucking drunk and threatened to call my parents and send me back home early. So that was not fun. That was not at all fun. That was actually fucking horrible. That was horrible. And the next day, we ended up going out to the island of Capri. And I believe that was the next day. We might have gone to, no, I think we went to, this is what I get for not journaling it. We didn't go to Capri yet. That was the final day. The next day, we went to, what's it called? Oh, shit. Monte Cassino, that might be what it's called. I'm definitely gonna have to look this up. I'll write a blog post, y'all. But basically like a monk's sanctuary on top of a mountain. And I was so hungover, you guys. It was awful. I just remember feeling like shit the entire time. It was a very cool place we went to. I'd never been to a monastery. I'd never been to a monastery before. It was very, very intriguing. This one actually was bombed during World War II. And so they had to rebuild some of it. And thankfully, the plans for this monastery were actually sent away from it. I think it was like a couple weeks, maybe a couple months before it was bombed in World War II. So they were able to recreate it because a lot of the things were destroyed, but not the plans. Had they left the architectural plans there, they might not have ever been able to recreate any of the things that were destroyed. And side note, y'all, something that I've always just thought about when it comes to wars, I just can't believe that people would do something like that. Like, I understand there's a war going on, but do you have to fucking destroy history in the process? Like, do you seriously have to destroy history in the process? Because when you destroy it, you can't get that back. You cannot get the originals back. It kind of makes me think of like, okay, well, I don't know specifically what's going on in the Ukraine right now, but I guarantee you that the Russians have fucked up some of the history over there. Some monumental things, because Europe has been around for century and century and centuries. Some things have probably been destroyed that we're never going to get back. And so that, I remember, was probably the first time I had this kind of thoughts and these kind of like, wait a second, why would people do that shit? Was back then when I went somewhere and they were like, oh yeah, they pointed out, they're like, you can tell which pillars are original and which ones are newer based upon the colors. And they would say, yeah, you can see this one here is original because it's this, darker grayer color. This one next to it, which looks more bright and more white, that one is newer. And it's just, it makes me so sad to think that, like, I get that there's conflict in the world, but do you have to destroy things like that in the process? Like, seriously? Do you also have to kill innocent people too? But we're not here for that right now. Sorry. I just had to slide that in there. Okay, so Capri, the island of Capri. This island, so beautiful, which also, by the way, fun fact, I learned in one of my fashion classes, Flat Pattern 2 with Professor V, that capri pants, you all know capri pants, they were super popular in the 2000s. Some people still wear them to this day. Capri pants got their name because of the island of Capri in Italy. So this island is very, very well known for their leather crafting and specifically for leather sandals, which I bought a pair back then. I don't know what happened to them. They've been gone for years now, but Their leather sandals have been a very big deal there for hundreds and hundreds of years. And so when people wore pants, they didn't want to cover up their sandals, so they shortened the hem, and that's what made capri pants. Yes, you're welcome for that random fun fact that will hopefully get you some points in trivia one day. But Capri, for you to go to the island of Capri, you have to take a ferry. And we went on a people ferry because, again, we're dropped off in this big ass tour bus. Y'all, I will never forget. So we sat on the level that was, it was exact on the same level as the water. So there's that level, there was one below, and then there was the above deck. I couldn't do the above deck. I don't do boats very well. And so Spencer and Will went upstairs. That was too rocky for me. I couldn't do it. So I stayed on the water level with Miss Beasley, Megan. I think maybe Shelby was there too. Miss Beasley was Megan's mom, and so I will never forget this because she thankfully had Dramamine, and she put it behind my ear to help with seasickness. It was stormy outside, so it was really rocky, and it was terrifying, and I hated every second of it. And then what was worse is I'm sitting here, and then right across from me is a row of people who are also facing me. It's like in the airport when you sit down and you face other people, the exact same setup. This little old Italian lady was sitting next to her little old Italian husband, and she grabbed a clear bag and then started puking in it. And I thought I was going to lose my shit and throw up too. It was the most disgusting thing I've ever seen. Why would you have a clear bag for throw up? On planes, they don't give you clear bags. They have those little paper ones so nobody can see your shit. Gross. Oh, it was so nasty. It was so nasty. But because of the weather, they canceled this little cruise around the island we were supposed to go on. And I'm like, oh, thank God. I could not do any more boats. This is too much. But this island, y'all, it was very small. And so a lot of the vehicles were also pretty small. And so we walked mostly on there. Like, I don't remember taking any taxis or anything. I do remember getting to, like, go shopping and buy things. Speaking of, this adorable little shell box is from Capri. And you can actually see on YouTube Capri right there. And you may see these boxes in other places because they make these everywhere. Greece, Florida, I'm sure Hawaii has this exact same type thing. But I wanted to bring this home because I like little trinkets like that. I do. So yeah, that wrapped up our trip for the most part. And so one of the things that I will say that I think I mentioned this before that I do regret was just not appreciating the history as much. And guys, a lot of that had to do with me being 1, 17 years old, but 2, having issues with alcohol back then. I mean, I almost got kicked off that trip. You just heard that. And so if anyone's listening and you have high school kids, I strongly recommend that you go back and you go back and listen to season 1, episode 9. It's a party and we're underage. And just kind of learn about what might be going on that you're unaware of. And not so you can bust your kids and ground them forever, but so that you can have these hard conversations with them and help them understand that alcohol is not a solution. Alcohol is a problem. It just covers things up, and that's not a route that you want to take. It's really not. And ever since I became sober, I can definitely see how alcohol affected me in so many negative ways. And my life is so much more beautiful now that I've kicked that shit to the curb. But yeah, I mean, it literally ruined an entire day of Italy for me. Like that, I stopped writing in the journal because that night, when I stopped writing, is when we started getting really drunk. We being me, myself, and I. And then the next day I was hungover, so I went to bed as soon as possible when we got back to the hotel. And then by the time it was the final day, I was like, oh, I skipped yesterday, so I guess I can't write today. It seriously just fucked up the end of my trip. It really did. And, you know, looking back, I'm sad for myself, but like I said, now I got another reason to go back to Italy, right? Speaking of, I do have one more thing to show you. I mean, listen, the Italian flag, this is not a thing. It's just fun, which actually I will show you. Okay, 2 more things. How about that? 2 more things I'll show you. So this little guy here is a little statue, obviously, of the Colosseum. Because if you remember from part 1 of An Italian Adventure, that the Colosseum just fascinated the hell out of me. And seriously, to this day, the Roman Colosseum is it's my most favorite architectural place I've been to. Like, I've been to places in Paris and Amsterdam and Belgium, the Dominican Republic, Mexico, India, but the Colosseum, man, it's so ancient, it's so wild, and if you ever get the chance to go there, please do it, because it's just such a crazy experience to just stand there and just soak in and absorb in that, like, shit, this was made thousands of years ago. This is what people used this for thousands of years ago. It's just wild. So I got this for myself. It was like €1. People were selling things in little carts outside. I was buying those things and looking back, like, now I know better. Like, those are everywhere in Paris. Those are everywhere in all of these touristy cities. And you really shouldn't be buying from those people, but it was a fucking €1. So I like a good deal. I couldn't pass it up. Something else I want to show you real quick that has nothing to do with Italy. Well, a tiny bit. But I had this weird idea when I was younger that I wanted to collect a flag, like what I have here, the Italian flag, from all of the countries that I've been to. Now, the flag itself is not from Italy. I bought it in Washington State when I went to visit my sister from Mesker Maps. But I had this idea of just collecting all the flags of the countries I've been to. I don't know why. It's just one of those things that I came up with. So I've now actually started doing that. And if you'll see here, this is a mug that has the map of the world. And it says explore on it, which I think is super, super fun and just very fitting. And so far, I've got 5 flags in here, but I need a couple more. So I've got Italy, I've got Dominican Republic, I've got France, and this one's actually from France. I bought this in Paris. I've got Mexico, and I've got India. So I still need to buy Belgium and the Netherlands because those are missing. But technically, I've now been to 7 countries. So cool. So cool. And it'll hopefully be 8 before 2023 is over. So, yeah. That's something exciting. It's not a secret, but I'm not telling you yet. So maybe it is a secret. I don't know. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the remainder of my Italian adventure. I hope you're inspired to plan your first trip to Italy, or to learn more, or to dive into some more information. And really, guys, I hope you just go. I really do. I mean, who doesn't love pasta and pizza and just Italy, y'all? Like, Italy, it's so amazing. I really, really hope to go back soon, within the next, couple years. And yeah, so until next time, y'all, take it easy, stay grateful, and be joyful. Bye. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Travel Tales. Head on over to whatishaybellsdoing.com/travel to find the resources mentioned in today's episode. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a rating on your favorite listening platform or write a review on Apple Podcasts. Also, don't forget to hit the subscribe button to stay up to date on new episode releases. See you next time for another great adventure. Bye!